Welcome to Still Evolving, where we explore the truth behind lasting performance and resilience. Rather than relying on perfection or superhuman ability, our conversation will highlight how real strength emerges through simple, intentional habits grounded in self-compassion, adaptability, and the ability to grow through life's inevitable setbacks. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Lori Oliver and Jill MacRae, the co-founders of the Inactive Company, a sleep performance brand dedicated to helping people rest, recover, and perform at their best. Their innovative Inactivators sleep mask is scientifically designed to improve sleep and is trusted by professional and collegiate athletes. Lori brings 25 years of building brands and products from corporate and startup ventures to leadership roles at SPANX and has worked with organizations like Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, and the International Olympic Committee. She's also a passionate advocate for education and initiatives that support girls and women. Jill is a marketing leader with 25 years of experience growing businesses across brands, B2B, and nonprofits. She founded her own consulting firm helping companies scale and previously held leadership roles at SPANX, Starbucks, and other major brands. She's deeply committed to mentoring and giving back in the Atlanta community. Together, they've combined their experience, creativity, and passion to bring science-backed sleep solutions to the world. I'm excited to dive into their story, insights, and vision. Welcome, Lori and Jill. Awesome. So excited to have a conversation with Lori and Jill today. This is a little bit unique for the Still Evolving podcast. So there's a reason why I wanted to have you both on together, but also would love to learn from your separate journeys and your lessons learned. So why don't we start off, if you guys could share back a little bit about your journey, what you're working on, what brings us all together today, but also reflecting a bit on where you've come from, what's fueled you along your way.
Well, Lori and I met actually we were both served on the leadership team at SPANX for many years. And my journey was really in 20 years in companies like SPANX. So high growth, high profile, Starbucks, Dunkin' Brands, Coke, Darden restaurants, things like that. And we both come from the generation that you will sleep when you die and be a high performer and don't ask any questions and just get the job done. We became instant friends between the two of us. We have a baseball team of kids. So we were very busy traveling around the world, building this brand of Spanx, and we're like constantly exhausted and got a little competitive on our sleep aids. So we would give each other melatonin or buy the latest gummies, out buy each other mattresses and pillows. And we both kind of went our separate ways at the same time to start our own consulting companies, and then came back together about 4 years ago. And Lori had this amazing idea and said, we're going to re-engineer a 100-year-old product, which is the sleep mask, just like Sarah did for the girdle for Spanx. And that's how the Inactive Company was born.
So exciting. Wow. Well, as you both probably know, wellness as a foundation of performance is kind of near and dear to my heart. Our AT Performance is philosophy, and have done a significant amount of work in active recovery and sleep, enabling that foundation, that performance enhancement. So just excited to learn more. Lori, how about you? Hear kind of how you came together and what you guys are working on now, but share a little bit about your journey.
Sure. What I would add to what Jill said is for myself, I grew up, actually, funny enough, we both grew up in small towns in Georgia. We both grew up fairly health and fitness minded. My dad was an exercise physiologist. My mom was a nurse. Jill's dad was an MD. And with the military as well, a surgeon. And so we both kind of had not only a performance mindset in terms of hard work in business, both parents, high academic background. My parents are both first generation Americans, first to go to college. So we were very much encouraged around academic performance, but we also had a big thing around athletic performance / health. So it wasn't, we were all sort of generalists in terms of athletes. My brother was the superstar. He had a swimming scholarship to college, but it wasn't about necessarily optimizing to the point of Olympic competition in sport, but it was really about optimizing health from an early age by practicing a variety of sports, learning lots of skills, that sort of thing. So I grew up in a small town, and then immediately after graduating college, in that same town, because my father was a professor at the University of Georgia, grew up in Athens, I immediately went to Los Angeles. I needed a big city, big mindset. I wasn't sure why, but I always had this pull. So I spent about almost a decade in Los Angeles, working with a Fortune 50 corporation, and then got married and had a child. And then upon divorce, moved back to Atlanta because my family stayed in the Southeast. So that is really where I started more of an agency background, consulting. And then at age 50, became an entrepreneur and started my own thing, just kind of inspired by my own daughter, actually. Develop products and a business around young women and their empowerment. And ended up generally through, I guess, the aggregate of my background, but also through what I was doing from an entrepreneurial standpoint, working at SPANX with Sarah and with Jill and being on the leadership team there. So that's how Jill and I met, as she said, and the rest is history.
Super cool. Well, thank you for that. I'm curious, throughout these leadership roles and certainly in our personal lives, and Lori, I can relate to, I've been I've had to rebound from the divorce loss, but whether it was personal adversity or professional challenge, I'm curious if you could share back, each of you, what has helped you respond and continue to grow and evolve through that adversity? What's helped you get to where you are today?
For me, it's network and community. I mean, and that's actually, I believe, a learned skill in networking. So you kind of start that journey early on in your life. And then by the time you graduate college, you start getting closer to what your professional network might look like. But some of those lifelong friendships also kind of cross over into professional life, whether it's by advisory or actual business partnership. And I think knowing when to reach out and when to sort of rally your village around you is really important. And like I said, not everyone's great at it. I had to learn it, and it really helped me in times when I wasn't sure what my path was going to be.
When you say you had to learn it, what specifically did you have to deliberately kind of set your, like, every day, I'm going to do this? What helped you learn that skill or maybe actually take action to form that habit?
I mean, I think watching others and understanding if I didn't take the step to reach out, I would never know. I would never get a hand up. I would just kind of sit and suffer in silence by myself. And then understanding there are people who can give advice, who can open doors, who can offer opportunity. You don't know everything on your own. And while it is sometimes an element of pride, or it's an element of just not everyone's comfortable, like sharing everything and reaching out to everybody, but I had to literally write it down. I'm a big, like Lori will tell you, I write things down on paper. I plan everything. I live and die by my calendar. And I had to learn to do that, to hold myself accountable and to be able to articulate to others what it was that I needed. And so that was my intentional step that I took in being able to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I love hearing how you found a way that worked and fit for you. The first thing, though, it sounded as if it was almost like a perspective taking or a shift, a mental shift about what it meant to reach out, right? Like you talk about, we all have pride, we all have our egos. Some people, it may feel incredibly vulnerable. Some people may want to avoid it, perceiving those conversations to be threatening for some reason. But to first take the shift that this is an opportunity for you, perhaps to learn something that you can't see, or even to get some guidance on maybe a path that you haven't been on yourself, but could be incredibly valuable for you right now. And then finding a way to make that actionable within what works for you. If you're one that writes it down and plans it out, then how can you carve that time off your calendar? I know if I don't rigidly put down working out on my calendar, that time will get filled with other things. So I appreciate just knowing yourself and knowing how to really make that work for you. Super helpful. How about you, Lori? When adversity struck, what has helped ground you and be able to still evolve?
My go-to was always high anxiety, and I had a difficult time managing that. And that, not only as a child, but early in my career as well. I think I had a fearlessness about me, and I feel like I was pretty self-reflective, but at the same time, I just felt a lot of pressure about everything, pressure to perform, and I struggled to manage my own anxiety. So I think shifting for me or to kind of curiosity and more openness was really helpful. And also, instead of going directly to, I'm just going to listen to what somebody else tells me I should be doing, and that will make me less anxious, I really learned to balance listening to others, but also trusting my own inner knowing, and taking the time to listen to myself. And, that's very calming. You do know a lot and you're the expert in yourself. And so for me, it was
Right.
helpful to remind myself of that, but then take the time to hear that intuitive thought and feeling, but then never forget to take feedback and input from others as well. It really is just balancing the two. And so constantly looking for stimulus or feedback, but also then reflecting and listening to what I know to be right or true has been a go-to for me. And it really helps calm me because like Joel said, nobody knows everything. And
Right.
so I just kind of take comfort in just take a minute. What are
Yeah.
you hearing there out there? And then what are you hearing inside?
Yeah, it's an and, right? Not an or,
Mhm.
right? Like there's data all around. So perhaps from conversations or others, but also what I hear you talking about is paying attention to what your own internal data is sharing, right? And anxiety, I explain to people, it's our body's alert system to a perceived threat, real or unreal. It's an alert system. So asking yourself, okay, so what do I need to pay attention to? And maybe it's not as high risk threat, or maybe it may not even be a real threat, right? But nonetheless, if you can acknowledge it and just accept, okay, thank you, mind, for taking care of me. Thank you, mind, for raising this as a concern. And I've got this, or and I have a path, or and you know what? I'm going to do some more diligence and ask them for some more feedback to explore that concern. This can happen pretty quickly, but to your point, the end result can be a little bit more grounding. Like, okay, I don't have to know everything, but I can be prepared. I can show up in a way.
High performers, we find in my own experience is that it's difficult to give yourself a break sometimes. So just like you're saying, just taking that step back and giving yourself a break and taking a minute is huge.
I mean, certainly the challenge or the internal debrief, like what's something I could do differently? What's something I want to keep doing? Having it less critical, but certainly kind of aiming for that refinement. All of us high performers are in pursuit of excellence in whatever role we're in. Like I do that as a mom, like, okay, well, that conversation went to shit. So now how am I going to recover that one? I think all that reflection is really valuable. It just gets undermined if we're beating ourselves up along the way, right? I do an exercise a lot with teams, individual leaders, and asking them, like, what does your ideal coach look like? And usually I get answers like they challenge me, or they support me, or they give me ideas of what to do, or they motivate me, right? Something that kind of falls in those 4 buckets. And then I ask the question, well, some people can hire coaches, and I'm always grateful if I'm one of them to be working with someone in their journey. But those coaches may not always be around. Coaches may not be able to be hired for whatever reasons. But the beauty is you always have an inner coach, and that inner coach is usually talking. And so how does that quality of your inner coach align with what your ideal coach characteristics look like? Nice part about it is, if you're a sports fan, you're aware of this. Coaches get shit canned all the time, right? And there's not a professional coach out there who hasn't done some professional training, right? So they themselves are looking to improve. So why would you not want to improve your inner coach? What shifts can you make? And maybe they're saying the right thing that matches what you need at that time, but maybe they just need to dial it back a little bit. Like if anybody's ever been around trying to perform and you've got your coach in the ear, it's like, just let me shoot the ball. It's enough talking. So it's what they say, how they say it. And to your point, we all have an opportunity to kind of consider how we're talking to ourselves and what may be more effective along the way.
We also, I think we know a lot more than we think we do sometimes. And things that we might not consider to be relevant to a specific problem, but actually are, or can
Mm-hmm.
be. So in sport, they call it skills transfer. You develop hand eye coordination doing a particular athletic skill. Well, that hand eye coordination can completely help you in another sport. So,
Mm-hmm.
similarly, like the skills that you have in business or just even for life coping, transfer and are applicable across the board. So, just being a little creative with how you're going to face or address a problem or a situation and having this openness, I think, is also helpful.
For sure. You know, I, the question just popped in my mind because I'm sitting here with such an opportunity to have both of you on. We talk about this as individual leaders, and I'm really curious. You guys have worked together on executive teams even before Inactive. So I'm just curious, in working together, what have you found as a leadership team that is helpful, whether it is what you're saying to yourself, or maybe it is the network that you're surrounding, but what helps you as a team perform through challenge or change?
I mean, for us, it's and actually I could say we work together this way at SPANX too. You have to be a really clear communicator. Passive aggressive gets you nowhere, polite to a limit. And it's not to say that you shouldn't be courteous. That's different. But collaboration and clear communication really are the key to any leadership team, because just like with a billion, a multi-billion dollar Fortune 100 company that we both worked at, or even in a small startup, everyone's sort of got their own agenda and they're all racing against the clock to get their stuff done. It doesn't mean that we're not aligned on what needs to happen or what the future looks like, as long as we are clear about it and aligned. And that's where like I said before, the clear communication comes in.
Mm-hmm. It can certainly help reduce the risk conflict would arise, right? Like the clearer it is, you're right, we can still be respectful and courteous. We don't have to launch at someone, but certainly the clear and concise communication on point can reduce that conflict. When conflict does happen, what's it like for you guys, Lori? How do you guys navigate the difference of opinion, or maybe there was a miscommunication that arose? How does that work for you guys?
I think it's helpful, the stage in life we're in. This is not our first rodeo, so we have some perspective, and we're not doing work that is life or death. But I would say that the biggest thing, and I think we both learned this from Sarah Blakely, the founder of SPANX, is having a sense of humor. I think that, she masterfully would inject something ridiculous or funny that would turn a whole creative page, make people think differently about something, or just lighten the room in a business situation, or take a potential customer off guard just enough so that you were able to really kind of get to a deeper level of conversation or discussion around whatever the issue was. So I think we both like to laugh, and I think we try to use humor when things are just nuts, because things are nuts a lot, and you have to kind of say, okay, first of all, this sucks, but secondly, this is kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially for teams driving hard, feeling like some type of pressure to an external outcome, whether that's however you phrase it, your OKRs or your revenue goals or whatever. You would talk about the power of perspective taking. It's really easy to get kind of like narrowed in on what may not be happening or what the conflict is that raises your blood pressure. Laughter and humor, it really helps us pull back and be able to think more flexibly, or just disengage that sympathetic response that's driving so hard in that moment that probably limits then our ability to even problem solve effectively or make quality decisions. So I love it. I like a little dose of laughter myself. My kids would probably just eye roll me for some of my ridiculousness. But yeah, I mean, there is the intensity of the pressure that is so self-inflicted, right? Kind of sometimes taking a step back and just laughing a little bit, like, okay, maybe I'm being a little ridiculous right now. Such a helpful reminder. I always end or like to wrap up our conversations with giving you an opportunity to share back with the audience. What's something that you have found? You mentioned it can be a grind sometimes, but sometimes now with the experiences that you have had that works for you. What's that tool or actionable strategy that you find using within your daily routine helps you stay grounded, perhaps gives you an opportunity to recover, but also continue to optimize your team performance, your individual performance, and sustain that for the time that you have? So curious, who wants to share back?
I mean, it ties back to what I said earlier, that I kind of live and die by my calendar, but I also am a self-proclaimed overcommitter. I will literally have like things happening from 6 a.m. in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, because I also consult globally. So I'll sort of stack up my calendar. And I do overdo it sometimes. I would say, just like within what we stand for at the Inactive Company, which is rest and recovery, it's also a reset, right? Also professionally, personally, I'll also, try to stack up, meetings with friends, or overdue commitments, overdue engagements that I've been holding off in my personal life, and try to fit them in whenever I can, as well as my grown children. So I would say the reset is key for me, and tying that back into my, my calendar, like even like looking at that and saying, okay, what days am I completely stacked up? But a reset, a change of scenery, it always brings fresh perspective to when you're overdoing it.
Mm-hmm. Love it. How about you, Lori? What's your immediate actual takeaway?
It is when I started in the morning to set myself up for a successful night of sleep that night. It was life changing. And so I started to control my intake of light, if you will. So I started by getting morning light first thing in the morning, having my cup of coffee outside. Even if it's cloudy, it's fine, but that literally resets your circadian rhythm and tells your body it's time to start the day. And then at the same time in the evening, my husband now knows that when we watch, TV, we'll start binging Netflix before we go to bed. But I turn down all the lamps and lights in the room to a lower level, and
Yeah.
we completely turn off the TV at least 30 minutes before we go to bed and stop using phones and other devices to get rid of all blue light to then help our bodies and our brains power down and get ready to sleep. And for me, that changed the way I sleep completely.
So powerful. So powerful. I think, when I talk, especially to parents of young children, and I say, tell me about bedtime routine for your kids. And invariably it's like, yeah, we have dinner and then we do bath and then we read 2 books and we put on the soft music and everybody has their night lights that are ambient, like red, orange. And I was like, really? I was like, wow. I was like, how long does that take you? Oh, it's a while. It's a process. Really? Hour and a half? Hour? Really? What's your bedtime routine? And we're like cranking on these things up to the last second. And then we're surprised, right? When we're laying on the pillow and our mind is going a mile a minute and we're all jacked up. And it's like, yeah, we're human, just like the kiddos. We need that like routine, that the wind down. And I love, Laura, you highlighting and emphasizing the role that our light exposure plays, both in the morning and just reinforcing that circadian, the wake drive in the morning, and then also the flip side, more of that sleep drive at night. Helpful reminder. Thank you both for sharing back. This has been fun. It's been new to have 2 leaders of the same team, and I'm very grateful for you sharing back and the real conversation, and look forward to continuing it on.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Amy. It was great.
Thank you.